Hey there, interwebs, and welcome to another bonus episode of Flagshaming. Since last month was Pride Month, I took a stab at redesigning the flags of various LGBT communities. Originally, all of these designs and more were going to be a single video, but that script was so long that I broke it into 3 parts. I also removed a bunch of material which I determined to be tangential but non-essential to the main subjects at hand. Nevertheless, much of it was still video-worthy, so here it is now, sans context. Additionally, a flag with just one pink stripe and one blue stripe would be fairly boring and indistinct. Happily, I have a solution for this problem, but I also have a confession to make. For about as long as we've been together, I've been cheating on vexillology with her older sister, heraldry. In heraldry, when you have 2 colors next to each other, the boundary which divides the two is called a line. Imaginative, I know. There are many different kinds of line. For example, there's indented, invected, engrailed, embattled, potenti, dovetailed, rayoni, and wavy, for a start. There's also nebulae, which comes from the Latin word nebula, meaning cloud, but there are multiple different kinds of nebulae. There's nebulae deep, which is the standard sort of depiction, nebulae shallow, which looks like nebulae deep after someone sat on it, and then there's this style. I found one source which calls it doppelwolkenförmig, which means double cloud-shaped in German, but it's also suspiciously similar to doppelwellenförmig, which means doubly wavy, which is one of its names in English, although the term double nebulae is more accurate. Either way, both English names feel ironically ambiguous, so I would call it bilobed, which simply means having 2 rounded projections. It also looks like little love hearts, which is the whole reason why I bring it up now. For my bi-pride redesign, I removed the thin purple stripe from the center and replaced the straight line with one which is doppelwolkenförmig, formed from a string of interlocking hearts, because c'est l'amour. Now we can have a bilobed bicolor for bisexual pride. There are just 2 major problems with this design. 1, it's rather more testicular than I had envisioned or intended, and 2, it kind of violates my second commandment for this project. Although it lacks a distinct central symbol, the bilobed nebulae line essentially fills the same role as a recognizable element and addition to the horizontal stripes. I can still easily picture it on a t-shirt or a coffee mug in a way that would remind someone of the flag without confusion. So, while neither of these 2 issues would disqualify the design on their own, both of them together spurred me to create something new. My first thought was to add a distinct central symbol. In this case I used a heart as a placeholder, but since I wanted this design to remain a bicolor, I had to find a creative way to make it visible. What I did is known in heraldic terms as counterchanging, and among flag geeks as pulling a Greenland. Then I replaced the heart with a pair of crescent moons, which is a slightly less well-known symbol of the bisexual community. Lastly, I changed the pink and blue to match the rainbow flags to follow my third commandment. Next up under the multisexual umbrella is polysexual. This term is, apparently, for people who are attracted to multiple sexualities, but not all, which is what separates them from pansies. I'm not entirely sure how that works, because it's not like pansies are attracted to literally everyone, and I've seen some sources claim that pansexual and polysexual are synonymous. I have also seen another explanation of polysexuality which makes a fair bit more sense to me. One of the mantras of the pansexual community is hearts, not parts, but it seems polysexuality's mantra is porque no los dos. Basically, if I were polysexual, I couldn't care less about your gender identity, but your genital situation is a different matter. For example, I might be fond of men, trans women, and other non-binary folk who are biologically male. I'd take all gender identities, but I'd still prefer hot dogs to tacos if you catch my drift. I suspect it largely comes down to how you personally prefer to identify. For example, some bisexuals who rank as a 2 on the Kinsey scale prefer the term heteroflexible to bisexual, since bi carries the connotation of liking both sexes equally, whereas heteroflexible expresses the existence of a preference. The same goes for people who are a Kinsey 5 and prefer the term homoflexible. Because asexual is often shortened to ace, the ace playing card has become one of the symbols of the community. Also, fun fact, while I was researching this video, I discovered that each suit has been assigned to a specific group under the asexual umbrella. The ace of spades is used to symbolize aromantic asexuality, while the ace of hearts intuitively symbolizes romantic asexuality. The ace of clubs symbolizes gray asexuality, and demi-romantic and demisexual folk are symbolized by the ace of diamonds. That all being said, the ace of spades is generally regarded as the ace of aces, so that's what I used for my asexual redesign. Plus, if I'd used a heart or a diamond, I'd also have to change their color, and none of the other 3 suits immediately screams ace quite like the spade. Hey there, interwebs, and welcome to the final installment of Pride Month's 4-course meal of vexillology, served today with side orders of heraldry and mythology. Mythology, I pretend to hear you ask? Yes, mythology. This is Aphrodite, and she's the Greek goddess of love and sex, so it's no surprise that she'd make an appearance in a video about sexuality and orientation. In Hesiod's Theogony, Cronus castrated his father Uranus, god of the heavens, and yeeted the newly separated nutsack into the sea. Uranus's baby gravy mixed with the sea foam, and out popped Aphrodite. This isn't her only origin story, though, so the Aphrodite nominally fathered by Uranus has the epithet Urania. Later on, she and Hermes would conceive a child, rather uncreatively named Hermaphroditus, who possessed the physical characteristics of both biological sexes, and this is where we get the modern word hermaphrodite. As I understand it, however, the term which is currently preferred for formal use is intersex individual. Try to remember all of that, because it's going to be important in a little bit. Also, fun fact, Uranian was a 19th century academic term for a homosexual man, because the conception of Aphrodite Urania was a process in which femininity played no part. Oscar Wilde even identified as such in a letter to his close companion, Robert Ross. Right now, I would like to show you my Genderfluid redesign, but before I can do that, I want to show you this instead. It's the flag of the Dutch province of Overijssel, and it's glorious. If its central blue stripe had straight edges, it would be yet another boring five-striped tricolor, but simply by being wavy instead, it stands out and makes the whole flag a visual treat. Its waviness perfectly communicates that this stripe is meant to represent a river, in this case the River IJssel, from which the province takes its name. The design of Overijssel's flag comes from their heraldic achievement, or coat of arms as it's more commonly known. The field of their escutcheon, that's the shield bit, is blazoned or a fess wavy azure. Once again, we seem to have returned to the topic of heraldry, with all this talk of Ben's sinister and Fess's wavy, and that's no accident. Although I mentioned it 2 episodes prior with regards to my Bi-Pride redesign, it was largely irrelevant to my final iteration, so I wouldn't have brought it up then if I weren't going to come back to it. It's called foreshadowing. Anyway, this is my redesign for the Genderfluid Pride flag, and you can see that it too uses a wavy stripe, or Fess wavy if you want to be a bit more French about it. For my transgender redesign, I decided to use the typical transgender symbol, which probably seems obvious, but I only decided to go with it after picking the symbol which would adorn my Genderfluid redesign. Time for a history lesson. The use of the symbols for Mars and Venus to represent male and female originally came from Carl Linnaeus' 1767 work titled Montissa Plantarum, where he used them to denote the sex of plants. Although he would later switch to a multiplication sign, he also initially denoted hybrids with the use of the symbol of Mercury, known to the Greeks as Hermes. This choice of symbol was most likely a reference to the god's child, Hermaphroditus, since the hybrids which Linnaeus was denoting were examples of simultaneous hermaphroditism. When this occurs in humans, we use the term intersex, and that's why I told you to remember that. In addition to providing the symbol which represented intersex individuals, Mercury is also from whence we get the word mercurial, which broadly means prone to change and fluctuations. Just as a quick humorous aside, I have occasionally been asked to fill out forms which ask me what my general mood is, and I always put mercurial. The flag of New Mexico also wouldn't look out of place among the flags of the Japanese prefectures. Of their 47 prefectural flags, Ehime's is the only one not to use a solid color for its background. Many vexillology geeks, including myself, love these flags, since each one is an exemplar of good design, and taken as a whole they're still visibly related. They're basically the dramatic foil to the US state flags, since both sets contain about 4 dozen members representing chunks of a nation, but the majority of US flags are ugly seals on sheets, and the rest bear no resemblance to each other, while all of the prefectural flags are similar, simple, and stylish. That being said, there are also members of the vexillological community, again including myself, who consider the prefectural flags to be overrated, considering that they're just symbols in the middle of large, solid-color fields. This may have something to do with the design of their national flag, about which you could make the same complaint. It's hard to get much simpler than a red circle on a white field. Open MS Paint, select red in the Shape tool, and neglect to change the background color. Boom, Flag of Japan. And yet I've known what their national flag looks like since first grade, and only yesterday, at time of writing, did it even occur to me to dislike it. Why, in the past 20 years, did this thought not arise sooner? To be honest, I don't know, but a circle on a solid field does bring us back around to the intersex flag. And that's the story of how one video became 2, 2 became 4, and 4 became 5. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day.